You're listening to Till the Bottom. For better or for worse, everything is fascinating if you dig deep enough. If you agree with this, then this podcast might be right for you. Let's start talking.
Hi, welcome you all to Till the Bottom. We are your guests, Mitra and Nacho, and for this episode we have a very special guest. This time is the first time we actually have for our show a German. It had to happen. It took us a little bit of time.
We took a detour around the world to finally end up with
someone
from the host
with
nation.
A local, not exactly local, but somebody from the host country. Here we have with us Dr. Til Korten, and he's going to accompany us this time to talk a little bit about topics related to intelligence and consciousness. And but before saying exactly what we expect this conversation to be about, I think it's important to know a little bit of your background, where exactly you come from in Germany, and what do you do here? What do you do for a living? What do you do professionally?
So I'm a biochemist by training. I was born in Berlin. I actually was in West Berlin. I was there when the wall came down. It's a nice moment in history.
Yeah,
something hard to forget, I guess.
One of the most significant moments, I would say, in the recent
modern world
history.
Yeah. It's not an understatement.
And a good one.
Yeah,
I mean,
and a positive one. A lot of optimism came out of that. Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of the momentous moments in history are bad ones. But
And David Hasselhoff was there, I guess. Also, that makes it more memorable.
No.
Well,
I'm German, so I'm supposed to like him, but no. Not anymore, at least. And then I studied biochemistry and did my PhD in biophysics, working with molecular motors.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm doing, very simplified, is I'm trying to teach biomolecular motors to count. So I'm using the motors from inside our cells, and actually similar. We're working together.
Yeah, we're working in the same institute or same laboratory as well. Working with these molecular motors which move things around in cells. We take them out from the cells.
I think probably a good way to picture these molecular motors are like tiny nano machines, right?
Yeah, they're nano machines.
They carry out certain functions within the cell, but you can take advantage of their dynamics or the way they behave to probably adapt them to do some other tasks.
Yeah, exactly. So we take them out of the cell and then put them in an environment where we can control them very well.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so my project is mainly around trying to build computers that are powered by these molecular motors.
Mm-hmm. So
yes,
kind of organic computation or something like that.
Exactly.
It's biocomputation. Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's
and since then you have really taken a deep dive into computer-related advances that has been happening over the years now.
Yeah.
Which is why we have you here today for this conversation, because I think this is the perfect background that we wish a person to have in order to have this talk that we want to have for you today. Now, this conversation, as I said before, it's going to be centered mostly on intelligence, artificial intelligence, a little bit of consciousness. Perhaps we will also touch on the ethics of topics related with having systems that are artificially intelligent and that might at some point gain consciousness, and all these interrelated topics that we all think are very interesting. It's a little bit different from
very relevant to talk about at this juncture in history, I guess.
Sure, I think we're going to start a little bit with that, but I just wanted to throw some caveats before starting, because this conversation is a little bit different from the ones we had before, in the sense, if the previous conversations that we had you think were informal, in the sense that they were loosely structured, this one is even more, I guess. Mm-hmm. In the previous conversations we tended to have an outline, and more or less we tried to stay within the rails of the main topic. But for this one we decided not to have this outline, not just to have like a more or less blurry, flexible demarcation of the topics we want to talk about. We'll see how it goes on the flight. And a second caveat before starting, which is, well, I will speak for myself first. I'm very interested in these topics, but at an amateur level. So I read, whenever I find something on the topic of artificial intelligence or consciousness, I'm very interested in reading it, and I try to find out as much as I can, and I find it fascinating. I listen to podcasts on the topic or listen to panels and discussions of the main figures out there that are working on this topic. But I think I just want to say this because there's going to be a lot of, I think...
naive speculation?
Speculation, speculative arguments. It's also very, very likely that in comparison to the previous talks that we have had here, there will be a larger amount of open questions or just questions that we will throw and we will try to give some opinions, but not necessarily we will try to reach a definitive answer because, I personally don't have the background there to get to these authoritative statements about the topics that we will be talking about. That said, I don't know if you feel like adding something to that.
I feel the same about pretty much everything we talk about. so I have nothing better to add to that.
All right then. So I thought at the very least we could start on something very, let's say, definite, which is since the whole conversation is going to orbit around the concept of intelligence. I think it's necessary, whether we want it or not, to first do away with definitions or to try to understand what intelligence is, because if we don't set this from the get-go, I think we definitely run the risk to get all confusing and mystical while we are talking. So somebody that wants to say something about intelligence.
Could you give your opinion on what you think?
When you think about intelligence, what do you think this concept is in general?
So one of the, I mean, actually, there you can find probably as many definitions of intelligence as the times you go look for them. So, but the one that stuck with me at some point was the definition of being able to, in your head, plan some action and predict the outcome, and then basically optimize your way. So for example, there was they did an experiment with apes, and then they hung a banana from the ceiling that they couldn't reach by climbing or jumping or something. And then they gave them there were some boxes and stuff. And then they basically, the apes, you could see them pondering, and they were thinking about it. And then basically they didn't just try jumping or try climbing or something. So they could just sit there, plan and see, okay, jumping won't work, climbing won't work. And then they saw the boxes, and then they start building a tower with the boxes, and then got to the banana. And so there's sort of this being able to predict what's happening if you do some action. So predict the outcome of your action and then plan and optimize the action. I think that is sort of the best definition, the definition that I like best.
This is exactly what I was about to. No, of course I want to sound smart, so that's what I'm saying. but I was thinking on the same lines, like the fact that we can simulate before we do the action. And of course, it's not about just thinking and coming up with a solution. It's something like catching a ball. There is some mechanistic calculations that is happening with which you're raising the hand up in exactly the right time and keeping it as exactly soft enough for you to catch it perfectly.
Okay.
I think there is a lot of the simulations are wired inside, and there are lots of complicated calculations that are going through. Which, for instance, if you want to program this into an artificial machine, it will be a very, very tricky problem to start off. But we happen to do that organically.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try to more or less encapsulate what I heard, and you see if you agree. So what I hear from you, and it's something that I think it's a very valid and very functionally useful definition of intelligence, or a notion of what intelligence is, which would be something like goal-directed behavior that is efficient, or something like that. And I want to make emphasis on the word efficient, right? Because I don't know. I can think, for instance, goal-directed behavior. So you have a creature that is thirsty, and it's water, and this creature has several options at its disposal to choose from in order to satiate that goal. So that creature has the option, for instance, of going outside and waiting for rain to come down, right? That, if you leave the definition of intelligence at the goal-directed part, you are forced to say that's an intelligent kind of behavior, right?
No, but we are extending something more to it.
Yes.
Goal, and then you're also simulating it before doing the action.
Yeah, but we kind of
so
we
there
can
are
build
like
up
three steps.
we can build up step by step.
Yeah.
That's kind of I kind of want to make like put a grounding on a very, I don't know how to put it, very baseline definition of intelligence. I think that behavior would be intelligent to some degree, right? Because this creature has a goal, and in principle found a way to reach that goal. However, that way is incredibly inefficient, particularly if this creature has at its disposal, as we do, a tap where you can just open it and running water comes out, and that's it. That would be a more intelligent behavior. And I think what I'm trying to get at is that, well, before that, you mentioned these calculations that happen happening unconsciously when you are trying to catch a ball. That's a sort of computation that is running in the background, and that you are performing all the time, just to drive yourself through the world. There's always a certain part of your brain that is very active, running computations that you are not aware of in order to find your way, to navigate. I struggle a little bit more with referring to that as intelligent. The computation part, it's certainly a complex kind of activity, right? But the fact, here is probably, we can split into, I think what I'm trying to get at is that there are different levels of intelligence, right? So there's this first example that I gave of the thirsty creature who goes outside to wait for the rain to come down, and it's reaching the goal, but it's doing it very inefficiently. However, that's a certain level of intelligence. You need a certain level of understanding of the world, and put yourself into motion based on that understanding to reach that goal. But that's not the most intelligent thing you can do. You can run and open the tap, and then that's a higher, that creature is playing a higher level of intelligence. And these, for instance, unconscious calculations and computations, you definitely need a complex system to do that kind of activity. But if you would define that more as a kind of narrow way of being intelligent in different to contrast
an even
that
more
with
refined way of intelligence. I don't know. Like if you think about bacterias, and they are directing their way towards light, for instance. Would that navigation process be intelligent?
Well, there could be something like swarm intelligence, where on average you have more bacteria of a certain strain close to food than, but for an individual, I would say no. No. So what I was actually trying. So I also have a little bit of a problem with this ball example, because that is something that goes subconsciously for us humans.
Yes, but let's get to that later.
And what I mean actually more is sort of the creature sitting there at the chair in its chair, and then considering its options, like going outside waiting for rain or going to the tap. But without doing anything. It's not trying this out, but it's just considering the options, and then says, well, going outside for rain, it's pretty sunny. It's summer, it's probably not going to rain soon. So it's better to go to the tap. And then also it's faster, and then it executes the action and goes to the tap and does it. So basically this being able to
play out scenarios in your mind, let's say.
Play out scenarios, and also basically, and for that, the most important ability is to make predictions. So basically, the prediction, like if I go outside, I need to wait till it rains, but also the other prediction that already comes with it. At some point, it is going to rain. Mm-hmm. And then you have to weigh sort of the options, basically weigh the different predictions with your goal, and then say, okay, that is probably my best option.
Yes.
Yeah.
But why does this predictions have to be a conscious prediction? Like, for instance, when you're catching a ball and you're making these calculations, that's based on experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, yeah. And that's that is something that is these calculations are based on a lot of other information. And then you are judging, and of course, you have.
The difference is that in order to be able to catch a ball, you have to train it. You have to have done it before.
Yes.
And what I mean is something that you haven't had. The ape wasn't in that situation before ever. So, but he still could solve the problem efficiently. Yeah. Without training.
Yeah.
So that is something that I would say is sort of the core essence.
You're adding an element of innovation or creativity. The fact that some creatures do not need to have direct experience of a certain situation in order to come up with a solution or a appropriate behavior to lead themselves in that particular situation, because they have to some degree an understanding of the world around them based on previous experience, and also some models that some of them might be innate, some of them might have been learned, that they can extrapolate and predict how things might turn out based on what they know. I agree. I mean, if something is intelligent, that's intelligent behavior, right? I mean, there's no question. But I also get your part, because I think both things can be married.
Yeah. No. So my only gripe with that is So my point is, I'm trying to figure out intelligent processes where the prediction is you're not aware of the predictions.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in your case, you're talking about intelligence as in like there's also something running and wheeling this and making these images out. I'm saying some of these are so innate that you're not conscious about it.
This is a very good.
Yeah.
This is. May I?
Yeah.
Because I think. This will marry together both of the main topics that we want to talk about. And I think there's a kind of a mental device that you can use to marry these two notions together, which is, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we agree that intelligence, you can kind of map it into some sort of continuum, right? There are different degrees of intelligent behavior. If you start with the definition of goal-oriented behavior, then you're forced to say that bacteria, the way they perceive the environment through chemicals, and then they make their way into a source of light or a source of food. It's a display of intelligent behavior. It's just that in this line of intelligent behavior, it would be kind of the most basic one that you can possibly find, because it's goal oriented, right? And it achieves a certain objective. Now, as you go in this line, you will meet the insects that also display some sort of intelligent behavior, because after all, they manage their way through the world, and they manage to have progeny, and they solve problems, right? Then you keep on going, and then you reach, birds, small mammals, primates, humans, and who knows what lies beyond. And in this extreme of basic kind of intelligent behavior, you don't need to be conscious or aware of whatever of your actions, right? This consciousness does not play a role in this side of the spectrum. But as you go increasing if you go walking into this path of increasing levels of intelligence, then there's some point at which awareness creeps in, and perhaps that boosts intelligent behavior. Awareness in the sense of you reach a point in which you have a creature which is able to have a mental representation of itself. And once you reach that point, that creature has a lot of more capacity to display flexible behavior. It can imagine itself, how would my future look like if I go into this course of action? Which way? I have this goal in my mind, I have all these possibilities, and at all moments I'm picturing myself And that's the part where I think you were referring to this moment before action where the creature is just pondering upon like, okay, I want the banana, climbing won't work, jumping won't work, and the creature, throughout, it's always to some degree picturing itself doing this, displaying these behaviors and coming to the conclusion that it's not gonna work. I have to do something else. And that's kind of consciousness kind of creeps into that kind of picture to some degree, right? And if you have this scale, I think both, there's no conflict probably between what you were.
No. Absolutely not. No, and this your example is very good, and it is also a form of intelligence because it means that it is a process that you were able to learn. Or I would say, assuming that it includes a process that you were able to learn. Although I would argue, in principle, it's probably possible also for something like this to, like the ability to catch a ball, I think in principle could be inherited.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be trained.
Yeah, so it's a bad example because you are looking at the training aspect of it. I'm talking about the calculations that might be happening inside you for you to raise your hand exactly with suppose someone is throwing something and there's wind, so you're also adjusting for it. So something like that, and there is no training involved. That is
no, of course there's training involved.
Experience with respect to wind makes things move, lighter objects they move. So you're not doing the predictive calc.
Pretty sure I couldn't catch a ball.
So then it's a bad example. So the point is, if something there's,
I don't think so. No, because we humans and many animals have an innate sense of like a software of a precarious software to understand physical aspects of the world, right? There's some things that you don't need training for. Yeah?
This is actually something I wanted to add to your point before. So you said that we have a model of ourselves, and we constantly picture ourselves. But it's not only ourselves; it's also the environment. So we also are able to generate a model in our heads of our environment and can picture our interactions with that environment. And this is also something that I think is very important. And I think the consciousness is a part where we sort of interact with that, or where we use this model, and where we have a very complex model of ourselves and the environment. So basically, I just wanted to add this part that we not only model ourselves but also the environment.
This representation that you have of yourself and the environment becomes more sophisticated the more you learn, or in humans as you grow up, because you keep on learning stuff. But babies come with that thing too. The basic package of some very simple aspects of physics and mechanics comes. Babies are equipped with that, and there are different experiments that kind of. Have been made to demonstrate that. For instance, if you have like a wall and you have a ball, they expect the ball to bounce once it hits the wall. If somehow you rig the experiment for the ball to just go through somehow magically, they just get perplexed. They just like
they're surprised.
They are flabbergasted. How can that possibly happen? And there are many experiments of this kind. Also, they expect. They also have a very basic understanding of how living things move and behave, and how non-living things move and behave. So they do kind of experiments.
For example, as far as I know, the current state-of-the-art research is that babies don't have this world model yet, or basically they don't have the self model yet. So they don't know the difference between self and other. Yeah. And this is something that babies learn. They actually need even a couple of months to learn this. And this is also, as a parent, you see that change, because as soon as they grasp the difference between self and other, their behavior, their reaction changes, because at that point, as long as they cannot distinguish between self and other, they they cannot basically their model fails, and they so when they have a problem, like, I don't know, hungry or thirsty or whatever, then the whole world has a problem. And this is, for them, it's a very very fundamental thing. Whereas as soon as they can understand themselves, they can also start to understand the parents better. And also that then they basically know, okay, I have to tell the parents that I have a problem. I have to communicate that, and they have time to react. So basically, then so with our kids, basically, we realized this point when they were able to wait for the food, for us to get up and prepare the food, and then so this is something that I think
it's interesting because. And you can understand how you might need a higher level of cognitive sophistication to kind of understand those aspects of how the world works, while this very intuitive sense of very simple physics might not need that. And that's probably I think that's very likely why we come equipped with that kind of proto-mechanical knowledge, but not the social part. That kind of probably develops. Not probably, that there surely develops, and it gets more sophisticated as we age. Good. So I think we have more or less a working definition of intelligence, goal-directed behavior that is efficient. There are degrees of intelligence.
But maybe so I was trying to think of examples of how some behavior can be, but it's predictive in a very different way. Like, for instance, the immune system. That's a very intelligent system. Where is the predictive power there? So it's...
Actually, the immune system, I don't think it has a predictive power, right?
Yes, but that's one of your definitions of something which is intelligent. So with that definition...
But actually, I wouldn't define the immune system as intelligent. It's a very complex, very sophisticated, and extremely well-working system, for sure. But I wouldn't call it intelligence. I mean, you can teach it something. I mean, you can teach it, this is foreign, this is bad. But I wouldn't, at least, I mean, from what we just defined as intelligence, I wouldn't call the immune system per se.
I think you can put it in some point in the scale. I mean, because after all, it fulfills, it displays some basic properties of intelligent behavior, which is, first of all, it has a memory, which also we didn't consider this into the definition, but it's a factor that enhances, right? You need to have, for complex displays of intelligence, is much better if you have a memory than if you don't. And even for simple ones, simple organisms are able to guide themselves based on.
I have a good example for that. So a colleague of mine, they're working with bacteria, which can sense ATP, they can sense food. They are coming up with a way to place food sources and then let bacteria solve mazes.
Okay.
And they use this to predict shares, predict the market.
I think market. I'm slightly familiar with this kind of experiments.
What he told me is that at the moment, the bacteria are doing as well as humans in basically managing a portfolio. And they're actually quite hopeful that their bacteria can actually become better than
if you would
humans.
like to develop predictive model for it.
So basically, the swarm intelligence of the
but that's interesting because I guess some features where we try to make intelligent judgments, we get our subjective biases in. For such a system which is completely alienated from that, maybe you get a much more
and also, I mean, humans are bad with big numbers. Humans are bad.
There's a lot of different things. Like with chimps, also you can see that they have a much stronger visual memory.
I think it's a good point to introduce, because I think I wouldn't call this a disagreement, but there's some sort of difference of opinion of what is intelligence.
Because I will be very uncomfortable with the definition of intelligence where you say that the immune system is not intelligent.
Because you're talking, there's a notion in the artificial intelligence community of narrow intelligence, like narrow artificial AI,
I think.
and broad or general domain. So I think, again, if you once you're armed with this distinction, you can perfectly well categorize both. Every example that we have given here as an example of some intelligence system of some sort.
And there will be a lot of things in the grayish area also.
Yeah, there was just, when you were talking about these experiments with bacteria, I'm just going to add another experiment because I think it's very cool. But the problem is I always forget the name of this organism. Always. It's a Japanese, it's not a plant, it's a...
Fungus?
It's kind of a fungus. I always forget. Moss,
no.
I forget. It's a multicellular organism that can also it solves mazes. It grows and it forms like dendritic extensions and so on. And they have used this in Japan. They've done this to this property or this way in which this organism kind of spreads itself to solve mazes and also to solve issues of connectivity and to design better road systems, because they put let's say they put a map of Japan, right? And wherever there's a city, they put like a food for this organism, and then they just unleash the thing there. And this thing will always find the best possible connection between the sources of food. And they have used this kind of
it makes logical sense.
They have used this kind of experiments too. Slime mold, exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. I always forget that. I always forget the name of this thing. Yeah. Slime mold. So this thingy, despite not having, it doesn't have a brain, so much less anything like you can call consciousness or anything like that.
But it has a decision-making power at local areas.
But absolutely, at an absolutely unconscious level, and it's pretty much a consequence of the laws of physics, chemistry interacting in complex ways. So every intelligent behavior at the very bottom is that, right? If you keep on scratching layers and layers and layers of complexity and trying to get to the basics, you will find the same ingredients that you find anywhere else in the universe. It's just that what matters is how you arrange those ingredients, in which configurations, and then you will have this full spectrum of different levels of intelligent behavior.
Although I think that's maybe something that we should try to define also, whether we would call an algorithm that is deterministic, whether we would call that intelligent. So basically, it can be a very complex algorithm where you put certain variables in, and then you get a definite, like always the same answer out. And
as long, I would be willing to stretch my definition of intelligence as long as that solves problems that are sufficiently complex to solve. I would be willing to go there, but not unnecessarily. Only if it serves to illustrate something about the nature of intelligence.
So basically, I mean, because what the fungi do is exactly that, right? It's an algorithm. So if you place the food sources in the same, arrange them in the same way, they will at least qualitatively generate the same maze. Same with ants. I mean, ants, they always also find they have this algorithm that they find the shortest path between the food source and their anthill. Which, I mean, I think it's an amazing behavior, but I mean, so the question is if we should.
I'm assuming we can also do that, smell food and go in that direction.
Yeah, but I don't think we're as good as ants.
You don't know me.
It's hard when you live in a building when you have enough population density of Indians, because the whole building smells like food. You can't find the source. Well, anyway, there was something I wanted to kind of get us into a segue now, because I think more or less our definitions of intelligence, or what we have said, we can
work with.
We can work with for the rest of that. And if we need to patch it up or modify or improve upon these definitions or come up with more examples of, obviously we're just free to do that at any point. Now I would like to emphasize a little bit more on artificial intelligence, because I'm sure we have only talked about examples of intelligent or presumably intelligent systems that exist in nature and are organic. But something that it's very present nowadays is the rapid advance of artificially intelligent systems. And I think it should be at least of concern to everyone living in this planet at the moment. I would like to start this part making a non-controversial statement, or I think it's going to be non-controversial. I think we are going to agree that, as a matter of fact, you don't need carbon substrates to construct systems that display intelligent behavior, because there's some people out there that seem to be kind of a little bit reluctant to the notion of building a machine through completely artificial means that will, for instance, reach or overcome the level of intelligence that a human has, and they are very, very suspicious of that. Would you agree with that? Would you think it's in principle impossible?
I think most people will agree that intelligence is substrate independent. You have the same set of logic gates in a certain amount of complexity, and you can. So the operational property there is what? Complexity, information.
Information processing, I would say. I mean, you need something that can process information for sure. It's like some input, some output, but so a computer, definitely, I think a computer has the capacity to become intelligent if it's powerful enough.
More equally intelligent, or even more intelligent than a human.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I also signed that
yes.
deal. But
yes. But perhaps not in every respect.
You would like to think that we humans.
Yeah. I'm just trying to push some buttons.
No, but this is something that I wish I could honestly say. Yeah, not in every respect, but if I'm honest with myself and with what I think, the little things I think I know about this topic, I think there's no solid groundwork to base that argument. I think.
I just don't want to join that long line of people who've tried to somehow figure out a way to make us humans special and failed.
But aren't we the best thing ever? No, I'm in a weird mood today, I guess.
Of course, we are the best, most advanced species on this planet and in this galaxy and whatever.
Usually, I am the one trying to raise controversy. What's happening today? The roles haven't changed. Okay, no.
But you cannot conceive of any area of human intelligence which will be extremely tricky for computers to emulate.
At the moment, it is, right? I mean, the current state of affairs.
But which frontier will be the trickiest for computers to get hold of?
The energy consumption.
Yes. But that's an efficiency thing. We can build large enough machine to. I'm talking about which
tasks.
So the energy consumption, fine-tuning is already something that you call intelligent.
That's a limitation of technology,
yes.
Let's say.
No. Basically, I think this comes in on a different level. So what we can do, we can eat breakfast, and then we can go without food the whole day, and we can walk around, we can do things, we can experience things. And so basically we have a lot of freedom in our what we do, which computers, I think, for a long time will not have. Because a robot will need, I mean, even now, robots, they all have their uplinks to some big computer, and that big computer consumes a lot of power.
So the energetic mobility.
So no, basically to be able to be an individual that carries its own computing power with it. And so, I mean, one example, for example, is this, they now have a little robot on the space, which they're going to take to the ISS, the space station. Mm-hmm. And this robot is powered by IBM's Watson computer. Mm-hmm. Do you know this?
Yeah. The Jeopardy champion.
Exactly. But basically, Watson is just a problem-solving machine.
Mm-hmm. It's narrow in that sense.
Well,
very intelligent.
with respect to other AI systems, it's actually relatively broad because its main purpose is not Jeopardy.
Yeah.
It was just something that it happened to be good at Jeopardy. But
Really?
basically, So it's basically the point is you
It's
can
gold
ask a
one
question.
too.
It's a question answering machine.
Okay.
But it's not like it doesn't have to be in this narrow.
It's what they call an. Are you familiar with the Oracle definition when it comes to artificial intelligence?
No.
Nick Bostrom is a physicist and probably philosopher too, working in Cambridge, in the Institute for the Future of Humanity. I mean,
Yeah,
it has to be
I
the
checked out
coolest
the-
name of any scientific institute on Earth. And if you tell somebody, I work in the Institute for the Future of Humanity, and that person doesn't want to marry you on the spot, regardless of whether it's a man or a woman, you should never talk to that person again. I think I really believe that.
So are you proposing to marry that guy now?
So what's
I
the
think
article?
he's taken. I don't know. Anyway, the point is that in his book, he wrote a book. Okay, did I repeat myself as a fanboy? Did that come across somehow lightly?
No, not even close to that.
This is getting awkward.
No, let's go to the oracle.
No. Anyway, I don't know if it is his idea or not, but in his book, Superintelligence, he talks about different kinds of super intelligent beings or machines. And it has different categories. It has, like, if I remember correctly, there's something called a genie, which is a kind of artificial intelligence that you ask for a wish, and this thing finds its way to make that wish come true. Like, essentially a genie. If you have a super intelligent machine, we haven't defined what super intelligent is, but broadly speaking, is a machine or a creature.
When you said it, it's a genie.
Yeah, no, that's a kind of it. That's a type. It's a machine or a feature that exceeds human capability in terms of intelligence in every possible domain. Okay, so that's why, just broadly speaking. And the other is the oracle. And there are others, but I don't remember at the moment. But the oracle is a super intelligence that you ask questions to, and it gives you always the right answer. And okay, just this huge segue, just to say, so Watson is an oracle, kind of.
Well,
Or it tries
I
to
think
be.
you could. Well, it's not a super intelligence because it doesn't exceed human capacity in all respects. But actually, I mean, it won Jeopardy hands down. So in terms of answering questions, it's actually superhuman because because basically it can access huge databases. So they have made relational databases that basically encompass Wikipedia. So the point is with this robot, so it's like a small machine that can float and it knows how to navigate zero-G and stuff. And it has a little screen, and it can help the astronauts when they are... Basically, it's like a flying manual. It's like flying Siri, and they ask it, okay, how do I fix that thing? And then it brings up the manual.
Astronaut assistant.
Exactly. Now, and that's my point, is this thing needs a fast uplink to Watson. And at the ISS, this will work actually, although it's already going to be noticeable slow because it will take the communication from the ISS to Watson takes half a second. So this thing sometimes you will have to wait a second for the answer, which for a computer it's relatively slow. And now imagine going to Mars. This thing won't work, right?
Yeah, sure.
And the astronauts, they work just as well. They have other issues, but their intelligence works here, it works up there, it works on Mars. And this is something that computers will, I think, struggle for a long time still. So I think this will be the most tricky part.
But that's like a technological limitation, right?
Yes.
It's a technological...
No, I don't think there's any other fundamental limitation.
Yeah, I happen to agree with that. Sadly, that we cannot debate about this, but it's not a matter of the chemical composition of the substrate. Perhaps it's a matter of the architecture of the substrate, right? You need a certain level of. And here, I can only talk about this in very general terms, like complexity or something like that, interconnectedness or of components, or stuff like that. But that seems to be something that might be important. Certain.
You have to arrange the system in an intelligent enough manner. Very intelligent enough manner, yeah.
Although I think that is something that these neural networks are already very good at. So I think I don't think it's very far away. that they actually learn the connectivity themselves. I mean, at the moment, I don't know what the current state of the art is there, but at the moment, I think the layout, like how many layers you have and stuff like that, and how many neurons in each layer and how they interact is still defined before you teach the networks. But I think they will very soon use neural networks to optimize neural networks.
Yeah, not to be very annoying, but when you say neurons, just for...
Yeah, so neural network, what is a neural network?
Yeah.
They are not neurons, right? I mean, they're not...
No, so basically an algorithm that emulates a neural network.
Mm-hmm. And what's the feature they emulate?
Basically, they train, they learn. So you can train them to solve a certain task. Mm-hmm. And basically you have an input, and then you have like several layers of neurons, and they sort of get signals from the input, and then they change the weights. That's the learning part. So that some connections that sort of help solve the problem become stronger, and other connections that don't help solve the problem or that even hinder it become weaker. And then after enough training, the neural network, once you give it an input, it gives you the correct answer.
And at this moment, you give it an overarching goal which has a lot of sub-goals. Can it figure out what the sub-goals are on its own?
Yes.
So it can ask questions. Maybe not questions.
Just maybe one thing I want to get out before we continue is that it has mathematically been proven that neural networks can solve any mathematical problem, any logical problem. Mm-hmm. So any problem that is solvable with because there are problems that are not solvable, but any problem that is solvable can be solved by a neural network in principle.
And how does it know that something is solvable?
And that is the reason why.
But that's very interesting. Yeah.
That is the reason why I think that there cannot be a fundamental difference between humans and artificial.
But there's something there. I read this other book, which is. The guy that wrote it is an extremely intelligent person, but I think in this book he just went too overboard. Do you know Roger Penrose, Sir Roger Penrose? He wrote a book, I think like 50 or 30. It's not new. It's not a new book, called The Emperor's New Mind. And in that book, it's a big one, he's trying to prove or to give arguments against the notion of the possibility of having an artificial system that is as intelligent as a human.
Many have tried.
This guy really tried, and there's
to prove that it's not possible.
It's not possible, and one of his main arguments rests upon the notion of, here I'm going to get into territory that it's not of my expertise at all, but more or less, I'm gonna gloss over and try to scratch the surface. Is the Gödel's theorem, unsolvability theorem, which is something of the sort that there are some problems that are not solvable with using the logic of that particular. I don't know how to put it. With the particular domain, so you have a mathematical structure, and this mathematical structure contains certain logical connections, and there are some problems that you can pose within these premises, logical premises, that are not solvable through the logical elements of the.
That's exactly what I was getting at when I said any problem that is solvable. So I was exactly excluding these kinds of problems. Yeah. So you're saying that humans can solve them?
He said that humans can see solutions to those problems, even if they don't work through the logic rigorously. This is so they can. So
and then he tried. You're talking about intuition.
Yeah, he tried to make a kind of an argument to explain issues like creativity. At the core of his argument is things like creativity or intuition, or kind of non-linear thinking, or something of the sort that sounds quasi-magical or mystical almost. It's the reason why you cannot have an artificial intelligence system that is as good as a human. Now, I personally don't subscribe to that. It's just that I just wanted to say that there's people there that are eminent in their fields, and actually this guy is a very accomplished scientist, and still,
No, I mean he's one in a long line. I mean, which all have been very accomplished scientists, and they all failed. And the thing is that I mean, actually one of the best examples is the definition of intelligence, because for a long time scientists tried to find a definition where only humans are intelligent and all other animals. So basically, they tried to define the difference between humans and animals. Yeah. Via intelligence, and that's why they needed a definition of intelligence that only fit humans. Yeah. And they all failed. I mean, the first thing was to be able to use tools. Yeah. And then they found, I don't know,
even ravens can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Corvids.
And then they said, okay, well, we are able to make tools. Well, but chimps do that as well.
And now they're doing it with artificial intelligence, like calculations, and then you have something, and then play chess,
and then they do it. The unsolvable problems and intuition and stuff, and basically fuzzy logic, which means like not rigorous logic, but being able to still optimize a problem even though there is not a definitive answer. But I mean, I'm 100% sure that this is actually probably relatively easy for an AI to become better at that than humans.
And do you think, what's the common notion in the world at the moment? How deep in the hole are we in? How much more intelligent?
In the path towards super intelligence?
Yeah. The common public is clearly not aware about how intelligent their systems around them are. Or are they not consciously thinking about it? When does moral and ethical dialogue start?
Well, some people are more or less aware, and the reaction is kind of a mixture between amazement and fear. For instance, when people, I don't know if you have had the experience of talking with people about these YouTube algorithms or Amazon or Google or all of these things that because just by the mere fact that you're surfing the web, there's some sort of algorithm that is keeping track of your preferences, and then it just bombards you with this is a recommendation, or with merchandise. Buy this based on what you have bought before the websites, and this is obviously a very sophisticated kind of algorithm and application of an intelligent system that is able to compile information about you and gather a record and has some sort of memory, and based on that it spits out a roster of things that you might be interested about. And people, I think that's a widespread or a type of intelligence system that people are familiar with, and the reaction towards that is generally of absolute distrust for the most part. Why? No, feel like their privacy has been invaded. So
but most people are pretty much taking it in, absorbing it in. People are not getting really shocked and surprised by it. So what I think about is when you look at how, for instance, when we could map the genes, we could figure out the structure of the gene, and then at some point people realized that you can manipulate genes and stuff. There immediately a lot of government constraints came in. You had these massive seminars where governments made all these regulations to stop this from happening. There were lots and lots of regulations that were imposed.
Oh, that wasn't immediately. That took decades.
2 decades. So you're saying that we are not yet there.
No, basically I'm
saying... And we will never... this may escalate so quickly that we will never reach there. Yeah. And you think that is going to happen?
I think that... because the
No, but
technological development is exponential at the moment, right?
So with respect to the gene example, I think the escalation happened in the late 80s and the 90s, I would say, with respect to that. But before that, there was a period of 40 years where there was rigorous regulations, which got eased over the years, because we understood more and more and figured out what the risks are, and maybe we were getting a bit too overbearing on a lot of other risks. With the computer, the revolution that has happened, I think we are really up the exponential curve already.
Yeah.
And the conversations are extremely necessary at the moment.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And there aren't as many regulations, or people are not thinking about what should be controlled and even how to control it, because we don't have a grasp of the game. We don't know what the field is like.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment you have toys, right? I mean, you have basically AI at the moment is like what
Siri.
people generally experience, exactly Siri and Alexa, and I mean they're cute, right? They make jokes, they interact with you, but they're also very dumb. Like at times, many times they just
But they're getting smarter.
They're just
smarter.
giving you some Google hits or I don't know the answer to that, and then or get cocky or whatever. But basically, I mean, you can still basically feel safe with them because you're smarter than them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Alexa learns these skills, which are very simple algorithms, right? Where I mean, everybody can write a skill for Alexa now with this Amazon API. So,
but that is true. We are very aware that we are smarter than them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that makes the fear
but now I'm immediately thinking that this is something you cannot get rid of. That immediately changes the game. You take the thing more seriously.
There's also a fear in the community of people that are actually directly involved with developing artificial intelligence that it is kind of the most natural assumption is to imagine that if we build a super intelligent machine or a machine that exceeds human level intelligence, it's going to be made under some sort of safe environment. It's going to be in a huge lab, very well funded, already regulated, or a governmental agency or something of the sort, which is for the most part under surveillance, under control. But there is this kind of trepidation in the community because there's not a lot of consensus of how difficult the task is. It seems very difficult, but there's a fraction of the community who thinks that
task is, sorry?
To develop a super intelligence system.
Okay.
Or what is needed, like to crack to trespass the boundary between these devices that obviously kind of behave intelligently, but it's very obvious that they have limitations and that we are still at the top. But what I wanted to say is that there's a certain level of concern that it lies along the lines of maybe it's not incredibly difficult. Maybe a group of Russian crazy hackers can gather together in a basement and just unleash somehow one super intelligent algorithm into the net, and then just basically they have this Terminator scenario just running out of control. But this is the fact that the people that are at the forefront of the research have that kind of concern. It only, from my point of view, what transpires from that is that it seems that we are kind of like kids walking with a very dangerous toy in our hands, and it's just like kind of, it's like a hand grenade, and it looks very kind of safe, but we don't know if you just take off the lid, it just boom, the thing explodes, and there's this.
Although actually I'm so XKCD. Randall Munro put it made a very good sketch about this. Not too long ago. So he basically had a timeline, and then he said, okay, artificial AI algorithms is sort of now, and then here's sort of the time I worry about is, and then there's this point, okay, super AI, self-conscious super AI, and then this time, then he says, okay, that's the time most people are worried about. So he says basically the point when it's super intelligent, that's when he stops worrying about it, because then it's smart, right? Yeah. And
up until then, it can create havoc.
No, basically the point where the dangerous stuff is where we have drones that are very intelligent but controlled by humans. So basically the other humans, the humans that control the AI are much more dangerous than the AI itself. And I totally agree with that. So basically, as long as it's under our control, it's dangerous.
So you're a technology optimist with this.
Yeah. That relies very heavily on solving something that is called the alignment problem. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The alignment problem is that it's basically if you let's imagine the super intelligent
our goals align with
the super intelligent machine is there. It's just waiting for you to just press the on button and it will go online, and you have to brace yourself. Before you push that button, you better be damn sure that the goals of that machine whoever programmed the goals, it also took care of implementing something that it's called utility function, which is let's say that that the goals of the machine are morally aligned with the goals of humans, so that to make sure that when this thing is trying to accomplish its goal, is not going to in the making just do something very detrimental.
Give the paperclips example.
The paperclips, the paperclip maximizer. This cartoon example.
Yeah. So that's the whole point. Like, suppose you have an intelligent machine whose only sole source of satisfaction in life is
to maximize the number of paper clips.
So it doesn't care if
it uses all the atoms in the universe to make paper clips. Yeah, right. It's a cartoon thing, right? Obviously, nobody. But
that's the thing. Like, my opinion on this thing is it's a very naive way of looking at it, where you do thought problems. What if we lived in a world where everything was inverted? Like, it's that kind of a problem. I think because these things will develop along with us, and most likely we are going to, because there will be people who are designing these things will be concerned about the consequences. And hopefully there's enough. So for me, the scary thing is if there's only one company or one source working towards it. If there are 20 sources working towards it, then there is a control and check with respect to taking care of the risks. And the thing is, that super intelligent machine whose only goal is to make paper clips will have evolved with us. Yeah. So it would have known what is actually beneficial and what are the grounds, the territory that it has to work under.
But you need to program those.
Yes, but those things will come naturally. Even if we don't understand the code at some point, which is what we are scared about, right? With neural networks, we just don't know why it is so creatively brilliant. Like, you have this, I guess it's a Deep Blue which solves these Atari games, right?
I don't know if it's Deep Blue. I mean, there's this. Yeah. What really blew my mind recently was this new algorithm by Google. So they had AlphaGo, right, which beat the world's best Go player last year. And this summer, not that long after, now they have, I don't know.
AlphaZero.
AlphaZero, yeah. Which basically they trained
even the name is scary.
Whoa! It's the version 0 point something of the AI, basically which they trained just for 5 days. So AlphaGo trained for a year
because the system, the way they are doing this, solving the problem is very different now.
No, but you have to get to the punchline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this AlphaZero trained against itself, and they only gave it the rules of the game, nothing else, no other information. And that game developed basically after 5 days. It beat 90% of the chess games. It beat the best chess computers. 60% of the Go games, it beat AlphaGo. And of course, and then it beats basically all computers at all games, and that means it beats all humans hands down.
That's the crazy part, that it was able. We kind of got used to computers beating humans, right? It kind of more or less now.
Now it's computers beating computers.
But this computer beats the best computer.
By so much.
Yeah,
because just in 5 days training.
And for all those people.
And without any, so I mean, like the computer games, you give them like opening databases, like Fritz and whatnot. The chess computers, they have opening databases and what's stuff. And they analyze the games. So basically how this works is it plays games against itself, and then sees which strategies win most often, and those it enforces. So it's an adversarial neural network. So it plays against itself. And
so my question is, was AlphaGo also a neural network system?
Yes.
Yeah.
But so it's 2 neural networks. One for judging the value of a position, and one for making predicting moves, or predicting the outcome of the game. But this AlphaZero basically, I don't know if it's 1 or 2 networks, but I think it's just one. And the crazy part is, so they looked at all the chess games, and they could see it was developing the whole opening theory all over again. So what humans did was, it made sense, but so basically it's you could see that for a while it would favor I don't know, the Spanish opening, and then it would favor some other opening, and
opening as in like the first move in the chess.
I mean for pro chess players, like the first 20 moves are sort of given.
They have names.
And so basically it developed all these great or these.
But these are these creepy stories that we hear, right? Like they don't only optimize hands down winning, but they also come up with such refined strategies which we would never have come up with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And AlphaGo.
And this was the same thing I was talking about, these Atari games. Like like they come up with solutions which humans have never gone ahead and done. Like it's infallible ways of winning something. Yeah. So coming up with the absolute code for absolute strategy in some ways. Yeah.
Although I mean, AlphaGo doesn't have the absolute strategy.
Yeah, because it has so many different
or it didn't have it
states.
At the time I read the article. I mean, who knows what it does now?
The speed is it's amazing, right? The speed at which it
and
makes sense.
Actually, the key is a technology in this case, because Google has these what they call tensor processing units, which are like.
So they're solving the energy problem.
They're going a long ways in that direction. So, I mean, especially they have specialized hardware that can do nothing else but like train neural networks. But this, it can do extremely well. It does, I don't know, 13 teraflop operations, Tera, whatever that is.
Beta.
Yeah. So very an extremely high numbers, better than any graphics card, better than any CPU. So this is sort of why it's so crazy good.
And that's going back to one of the starting points, just to turn it upside down. That's an inherent advantage also of the material of the substrate, because organic substrates are nice and amazing in terms of what they can accomplish in terms of intelligence, but they are slow. The transmission between neurons, it's very, very, it's orders of magnitude slower compared to silicon microprocessors. So even if you imagine the case of a computer that has human level intelligence, which I think is mostly a mirage, but let's just say that it's a computer that has the intelligence of a genius, say an Einstein, just because of the difference between computer processing time and human processing time. There's something there's an equivalence of something like 1 hour for this computer thinking, coming up with some strategy to, for instance, beat every chess champion. In 1 hour, this computer pondering upon all possible strategies, it's the equivalent of some crazy amount of time in human time, like 10,000 years. So that's an advantage.
In 5 days, this AI did what humans did in hundreds of years of chess theory, right?
Yes,
so that's all humanity.
Yes. But then, if you count the number of calculations humans have over the history of humans.
But that gives you a very important lesson.
It's a much faster calculation.
Yeah, because you were kind of worried about the takeoff, which is it's usually called the takeoff issue of superintelligence machines, which is a lot of people have the intuition that this will happen gradually, that we will kind of develop a machine that it's intelligent, and then we have an improved version of it that is slightly better than the previous one, and then you go to the next level, you go to the alpha 0, alpha 0.2, alpha 0.2, and it's a kind of smooth, gradual process of takeoff. Yes. But there's the other possibility that it just happens, and that's
it's always nicer to look back than look ahead.
That's when you definitely need to take into account the factor of the substrate, what the substrate is made of, and the time scale in which this substrate operates. So even if you have a machine that is not much more intelligent than a human, let's say, than the average human, but it's made out of silicon, it will have essentially all the time in the world compared to human years to improve itself, to think.
But that's true. That's a good point that you bring across. Like you talk about how the energy consumption, the energy efficiency is so much better in human substrates, not human biological substrate. But yeah, the rate of calculations we can increase infinitely in computers.
No.
Not infinitely, but it's much faster.
That is an exaggeration, of course.
No, but not even close. So the thing is that
because you're focusing it on one problem. It's not a system which is working on millions of other things.
Yeah. No. So basically, so the thing is that there is a fundamental cost of information processing. So it has been shown that to delete one bit of information, you need half kT of energy. This is the fundamental limit. You cannot, but this is assumed. This you can only reach that limit if you calculate infinitely slow. And then the thing is that the faster you calculate, the energy required per calculation goes up exponentially. And so us being slow, like in individual calculations, may actually be
more energy efficient,
contributing to
us being more energy efficient. And so basically, maybe a necessity, and not just freak of nature. So yeah, I think this is something that is, and then also. As a computer, at least nowadays, most computers, they calculate sequentially. So they calculate one operation after another. Whereas our brain, it does billions of calculations in parallel.
Yes. So that was the point I was trying to make here. So when you focus at a single problem, there's a lot more things involved in calculating it in respect to something like human beings, where there are loads and loads of other calculations going on simultaneously.
So basically, I mean, for these robots that move around and build models of their surrounding, like the vacuum cleaning robots and stuff like that, they have a big problem. So you have to give them very specialized sensing equipment. So if one of these robots was trying to process all the sensory input that a human processes every second, they would be totally over. They would need like a megawatt consuming computing center to do that. And so I think that our brains are pretty damn efficient.
No, yeah, sure.
No, efficiency wise, there is no denial of that.
Yeah,
but also powerful, like in terms of calculation.
Yeah, I was mostly focusing on the speed factor.
Yeah, but I mean because
it's a singular problem that you're solving.
If you take the whole processing power, the brain is very fast.
Yeah.
It's just that not with one.
It's just over evolution. It has evolved its way of channelizing where you have to put in more energy, and where you have to focus less energy.
And also, I mean, our brains are actually like they use a lot of energy, and so the energy density so the brain tissue is the tissue in our body that consumes the most energy because the brain has weighs about 1.5 kilograms. So that's in my case a bit more than 1.5% of the total mass. But it consumes 20% of
metabolic requirements.
Oxygen.
It's insane.
So that is says a lot.
So to tie up this conversation and come to some sort of conclusion,
I have one last question. You go to your last question, and I do last question.
Maybe you do your last question first, or maybe So the whole point is what I was getting at. How comfortable are you with the fact that you have Google and IBM and these few companies, corporate companies, which are holding on to so much information which is not accessible to everyone in the public? So that because there is no the internal checking system. So this comes back to the same question about the talking about the ethics of what kind of regulations need to be imposed and what shouldn't be. So that intelligent people who are more into this topic, everyone is aware of what is happening.
So actually, the EU has just made a big step, I think, in the right direction. They have this new privacy or data law, which puts very specific regulations on how companies can use private data. And basically this questions Google's and Facebook's business models, and they also have a very powerful this is actually the first time I know, at least for Germany, that there is now basically that if companies break the data laws, the privacy laws, now basically that they can be fined up to 20 million euros, any company. Or if it's larger, they can be fined up to 4% of their gross income. No, not income, but basically all the money that they're handling. So that's quite a bit. I mean, Google would, that is something that even for Google, or 20 million is they wouldn't care about it. But 4% of their gross income is.
But you're still not stopping them from doing the crazy stuff they're doing in the background.
Yeah. I mean, so
crazy stuff means sharing data.
No. What I'm saying is the development that is happening, and of course, what we are seeing out in the market is something that has already been in and around.
But mostly, like what you're talking about is like making profit with your data.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with the corporate model. I have, like, for instance, with the scientific system, what I like is that if someone comes up with a wild theory of some, like, or does some application-based thing, everything is out there for everyone else to get involved in or test it. So right now, if there is a monopoly happening, then there is a greater risk of scarier things happening if they make an accidental mistake. Issue. Yes, it's an important thing also. Like, if there are other people also cross-checking it around and coming up with different solutions, or coming up with, like, see, there's an issue out there. So there needs to be transparency at that level. I'm not at all talking about the monetary aspect of it.
Yeah. But most probably, it's probably more worrisome in terms of manipulation. Probably people working in these companies have a good idea, or some part of their personnel have a good idea of what makes people tick, for instance. How to channel.
So how I can put it is, collectively we are super intelligent. But as smaller the group becomes, the less intelligent we become, like, with respect to coming out with.
Yeah, so I actually think that this is, or to me, I'm much more worried about big data being used for manipulating people. I mean, which we know has happened. And with this Facebook thing, it's actually quite ridiculous.
With the American election.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as they use it to, Obama used the exact same thing, right? And nobody cared about it.
Yeah, there was.
Now that Trump used it, everybody's
to craft his speeches or something like that, right? Some information.
Basically, he could. No, basically, what he did was targeted advertising, and this is something that you can buy from Facebook for decades. So this is not new at all, but it's still, it's absolutely good that this discussion is happening, because this is, I think, much more dangerous than any AI could ever be. And the part where, like, this Monroe, I worry about AI, is exactly AI being used for this, to evaluate tons of data and manipulate people. Into, like, rigging elections.
Because right now, at least there is some human decision making going on when the computer comes to.
So that's kind of what is worrying him.
Yeah. So I get that point. But that is probably quite easy to implement. If we can totally see a future where the computers are taking care of manipulating human masses with whatever sensory excitement they can give them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So my question was more or less along the same lines. It was mostly. What's your general feeling? Is it pessimistic or optimistic in terms of you see how the trend is going in terms of evolving the artificial intelligence systems that we have? Do you worry in general?
So I'm not worried about superintelligence, like super intelligent AI. That is something that will happen. It may happen actually really soon. Because, like, seeing the development, how quickly it went from neural networks that couldn't do very much.
And you will be in favor of that, even though you have absolutely no clue what the consequence of that might be.
Yes. Because
of your curiosity?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm gonna see
but
what
this is
worries-
where I'm scared at, and that is where I'm
What worries
constantly
you?
trying to come up with, like, you need to have people regulating this thing to figure out it's not going haywire and out of
What
control.
worries you more? This, again, thought experiment. The super intelligent machine is there already. Would it worry you more if it's subservient to humans, or than compared to the case in which it's doing its own thing, following its goals, and
I'm more worried
it's
if
set
it's
free?
subservient to humans, because
That's interesting.
basically it would, an AI that does Trump's bidding would give him a lot of power, and
Yeah, sure.
Power corrupts, and it would probably give him absolute power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So this basically it would shift the entire power balance, and it could very well create an extremely stable, long-lasting dictatorship and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this worries me much more than an AI that does its own thing. And so basically,
But I don't even get
actually
it. Like,
think-
I thought that AI doing its own thing is some AI which is in some
A wild
words,
form
something
AI.
like a conscious thing, which also feels the importance of power, maybe.
No, it doesn't necessarily matter. It just depends on. I get it. I kind of, for the most part, feel you.
The thing is that humans will always have conflicts, will have conflicts of interest.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, like, one human wanting all the power over all other humans is a clear conflict of interest, and this could be enforced by one human being in control of a very powerful AI. As soon as the AI is self-conscious and controls itself, the goals will actually, I think, be much more orthogonal to our goals. Basically, meaning that its goal isn't neither conflicts our goals nor is has the same goals as us.
Or maybe
It has
add
goals
together
that it-
alien.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, because we need food, we need human interaction, and we want to.
But there the issue is if even if their goals are not at all aligned with our goals one way or another, it's still possible that while this machine is trying to accomplish its goals, it will step over our goals just by accident, just accidentally. It's just like
Yeah,
No, but
although
that is you're thinking the AI is somehow dumb in that sense.
no,
Because a very
if
intelligent
no, no,
AI
no, no,
will
no,
also
no.
let them be used.
If it has goals that do not care one way or another about human
I'm
goals
very
at all.
uncomfortable with the
So
idea of it having its own goals.
So
Yeah,
one
but
scenario.
you cannot. That those goals have to be programmed from the beginning, right? I cannot even picture that.
No, exactly.
That's the whole
where
point.
I don't
as
understand.
As soon as the AI becomes self-conscious, it can make up its own goals. It can sort of define its own goals.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay. I agree with that. But it will also develop its own limitations, its own moral code, its own.
No, basically, maybe it doesn't have to. I mean, so for example, for an AI, it would actually make a lot of sense to move into space and do its thing there. Because in space you have the solar energy is more
Resources.
powerful. The resources are much easier to get to, like silicon and metal and whatever. Because in asteroids you don't need to drill through big crust. And
So you're about spreading the AI away from
yeah,
us.
basically,
Let them go.
I could very well see how an AI doesn't care about humans and just moves.
It's like
But what I
the
think
parents of an parents of a village Indian who
Send their kids.
sending
But
their
that's
kids
but
abroad.
that's
Go do
exactly.
your thing.
But I think there's a little bit. I'm sorry, but a little bit of a lack of imagination of how things can turn wrong, even in that case. So this artificial intelligent machine has the goal to expand into space because there's more resources there, but it has to start here. So it can come up with the solution that the most efficient way to reach there is to. I'm going to make use of solar energy, so I'm going to cover the whole planet with photo cells. And what happens? It wouldn't care about what happens to us at all. It's just one way or another. It will obviously be detrimental to us. And this, at no point, this machine had the intention to do us any harm or whatsoever. It simply doesn't care. So there are many ways in which these things can go wrong that you cannot foresee. It's very
But
tricky.
Existential crisis for humans and other animals based on such a super intelligent AI, that is something I think it's a bit far-fetched.
So I mean, I actually
Of
agree
course,
with you, because in principle what we are doing, what humanity is doing with the Earth is the exact same thing,
Yeah.
right? So basically, in your case, we humans are the dolphins and the
No.
AI is... So basically, so what
Yeah.
you're worried about is a super intelligent AI doing the same to us that we are doing to the
No.
dolphins,
What,
whales,
what
or
I'm
whatever.
saying is that if the goals are in no way aligned, if the goals of this machine are not in no way aligned with
That's
human
okay.
interest, there are many ways in which it will step over us and over our goals without having the intention to do so. It will just be collateral damage that it will not.
So that's exactly what he's saying.
Yeah, but I don't think that's a desirable thing.
No. Although actually, I mean, this
But
may sound very drastic.
if you see humans essentially as some sort of infection that
No,
the
I wouldn't
planet
put it
is-
that
No,
way.
but it's a very like this picture is probably That's the thing. The thing is, there is a possibility of something like that happening, and that you cannot deny. But because it will go, I assume it will go through an organic process of evolving.
But
even
that's
super
exactly
AI.
what I would not.
You don't think so? You
grant
think that it just immediately just goes?
I don't think. It might be, but I don't think it's a safe assumption to make that the process to get there is going to be like an evolutionary process, step by step, little by little, tiny improvement upon tiny improvement upon tiny improvement. That's
Not a tiny improvement, but
gradual in a way that we can implement measures to contain it if we need to. That's what I don't think it might be the case, but I don't think it's granted. I don't think it should be taken just for granted.
But this is where I come into the fact that whatever development is being happening in this area needs to be a bit more transparent.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I totally
because then we come up with
I agree on
solutions
that
like
too.
Yeah, we do the fact.
I think we could probably end on that note of agreement.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I think we might have you again because I think there's a lot of
Things we need to
territory that
explore. We have to explore a lot more.
Yeah, the consciousness part was not even there for the most part. I mean, a little bit in the beginning, but I think there's a lot of things to flesh out in that
There's a lot
particular
to discuss.
topic. So thank you for being here, and
Thanks for having me.
I think you're going to be contacted by us sooner or later. It's going to happen. Be ready. Okay, so
Yeah.
time to say goodbye.
Yeah, time to say goodbye.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
See you next time.
Bye.
If you like what we do, please help us continue doing it simply by subscribing to our YouTube channel, following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, visiting our website tillthebottom.com, or spreading the voice. All the links are provided in the description. Thank you for listening, and until the next time.